Hey, what's up, guys? It's Bex here, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of my random horror reviews. Today's movie is from 2005. Definitely a conversation starter. Today's movie is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This is going to be one of the most divided films I've ever experienced through different people's opinions and conversations. It's normally divided for one of two reasons. Just first of all, if it's a good movie or not. I feel like there's not many people sort of floating in the middle. You either really like it or really don't like it at all. Like I said, I've had a few people sort of floating in the middle, but not many. It's one that is just a clear split between for me with people. And then the other reason that it's quite dividing with people is the more controversial angle on the film and that sort of thing, which we might get into. But like I said, for me personally, it's been a very dividing film in the horror community that I'm a part of, and different horror conversations that I've had. So, like I said, definitely a talking point, this movie. But before we get into my opinions on this film, let's quickly go into the plot for this movie. So, the movie takes place during a court trial after a young woman, being Emily Rose, died during an exorcism, and now the results of which either fall on the priest who was being tried of negligence, I guess. But our lead in this movie is his lawyer, and she is the one assigned to get him off on the case of, her dying of supernatural forces, which is obviously going to be very tricky. So this movie is honestly equally a courtroom drama and paranormal horror movie. Though it bounces between the courtroom setting and having these flashbacks recounting scenarios leading to the exorcism and then the exorcism itself. So that's pretty much the plot for this movie. So let's get into my thoughts of 2005's The Exorcism of Emily Rose. So I guess we'll start with the topic, is this movie any good or is it at least entertaining? Because like I said in my introduction, that's a big divide between people. At least from my experiences, you can only seem to love this movie or hate it. So what do I think? I think it's fine. I know that's a very underwhelming reveal, and like I said in my introduction, there are a handful of people that I've met that are sort of neutral on it, and I am one of them. I think it's engaging enough, but it's also doing nothing that's really blowing me away, if I'm being honest. I think the courtroom drama side of things is interesting and, honestly slightly different. You don't see that much in horror in general. But once you get the angle of what this movie's trying to do, it does push a slight religious angle. It sort of loses steam for me because you can sort of see the direction and where it's going, and it starts to lose a little bit of interest from me there. And with it being a mix between a courtroom drama and a possession horror film, it does peel back a lot of the horror too much for me. I've always said, just in general, possession, paranormal, demonic horror movies, especially ones from the 2000s onwards. I will say probably from the 2010s onwards have been the worst offenders, but I've always said I'm not the biggest fan of those movies. They all sort of go run by the numbers and whatever, so that already wasn't in its favour. But just the scares in this one, as I said, it already peels back too much horror, but the scares in this one are just sort of to the numbers to me. It's something that we've all seen before. This movie I've seen a handful of times now. I think the first couple of times I've seen it, it was a little bit creepy, but this time now, it just sort of lost all its steam. Nothing was really getting me this time around with the scares. And that just might be me, because I hear a lot of people say that this movie is extremely scary. So, I don't know, go and check it out yourself if you want to, see if it's scary for you. But all that together, I also feel like this movie does run a little bit slow at points, because it's also taking into account it being a courtroom drama. But from performances and everything on a technical standpoint, it's a good movie, and the story is sort of the main divide, but for me it's just sort of fine. So going into filming this part of the video, I had full intentions into going deep into the other reason why I feel like this movie is so divided with people. Like I said in the introduction, the more controversial reason why. I even had it written here in my notes, but instead I feel like I'm not going to go deeply into it. I'll still gloss over it quickly, but it's nothing I want to do a deep dive into. But I've actually heard a lot of people say that they really dislike this movie because of the way it pushes and paints religion. And from hearing that, you might think that it's religious people that have a problem with this movie and something about it doesn't sit right with them, but it's actually the other way around. People who aren't religious, they have a problem with the way that religion is pushed in this movie. And if you've seen this film and picked up sort of its undertones, I'm sure you can understand why. The first few times I'd seen this movie before anyone brought up this issue to me, you can understand, what they're talking about. It wasn't too big of a factor though, but ever since it's been brought up, it's definitely something that I notice more. In this movie, it's definitely got a push towards religion in a certain light, and especially a story that is apparently based on a true story. I don't know how much of it is inspired by a true story. It could be 5%, 95%, could be 0, who knows, but especially with that context in mind, it does feel a little weird how religion's being pushed. But the reason why I didn't want to go as deep into it as I had planned to is because I've said this on my channel before, I'm not a religious person myself. I don't have anything against religion or whatever, but I mean, fuck, I'm 23 years old. I haven't learnt much about, religion or anything. It's not something that I really think about much through my day to day, so it's nothing that I really felt like I wanted to deep dive into. And plus, they always say if you want to keep people happy and stay out of controversy, just don't bring up religion, and there's a handful of other things you just don't bring up. So that's the reason why I decided to sort of skip over that. Like, as I said, I had full intention to go into it, but at the end of the day, what we're talking about really is a movie, and I always say the most important thing a movie should be is entertaining. So I don't want to get hung up on reading into some other things, even though I agree with some points and disagree with others. But either way, this movie, like I said, it's fine. It's something a little bit different, having this courtroom setting and everything. But this movie is also a little bit slower paced, not overly scary, or also not as deep as I feel like this movie thinks it is. Like, I think it really thinks it's doing something fucking mind-blowing and touching and everything, and I guess that's sort of where the religion part also plays into it, but it doesn't do it for me. But it's engaging enough. Like I said, it's got different aspects about it that, separate it from other paranormal, demonic possession movies of this time. So regardless of your stance on it, I think it's a fairly interesting enough film. So I'm going to give The Exorcism of Emily Rose a 6 out of 10. So there we go, guys. Like I said, that little bit towards the end there, I was just sort of spitballing. Like I said, I had something written down and points that I wanted to touch on, and like I said, they were nothing really of substance, just because I personally, I don't really have a strong stance on religion or whatever. I don't mind. I have no problem with religion. You can have your beliefs or whatever, but I don't have a strong enough stance to really, I don't know, have a say in it. I feel like I'm adding nothing to the conversation by bringing it up or whatever, but that's why I decided to skip over it. But either way, thank you for joining me for this episode, guys. I think the main point to talk about is the movie itself, and I always try to keep it a bit more light or whatever. So let me know your thoughts on The Exorcism of Emily Rose, if you like it, dislike it, if you want to get, political or speaking about religion in the comments below. I don't care, you can do that if you want. But yeah, I'll see you for another episode soon, guys, and I appreciate you guys for joining me as always. Peace.